The All Blacks dominate, lock away 2 trophies, and continue a dominant 2023. But I'm going to give you my full match review now, and I'm going to explain to you why both teams, yes, including the Wallabies, can still be somewhat optimistic going into this Rugby World Cup. Let's roll that intro. Kia ora everyone, my name's Zach, I love rugby. Welcome back to Hakatime Rugby, guys. Full match report coming up right now as we go through the first game of the Bledisloe Cup. Dominant victory on paper, 38 points to 7 in favour of the All Blacks. It looks like these two teams are on different planes, but there is a lot of detail, I think, lurking under the covers that I think we need to get to, which helps to explain both why the score is so wide, but also why I believe there's optimism still there in the Wallabies camp. So just to run through the match summary, obviously the first try, a somewhat opportunistic try there. Scott Barrett putting a massive hit on Tate McDermott to jar the ball free, and then obviously Shannon Frizzell was able to touch down there and score. It was an interesting play because it looked like the Wallabies were somewhat disjointed at line-out time, throwing off the top to Tate McDermott, who was obviously caught off guard and was somewhat easy pickings for Scott Barrett. That is a locks absolute dream being put into that position, being able to just put a good shot on a halfback, and that is a halfback's worst nightmare. Clearly, a bit of dysfunction there and a bit of disjointedness from the Wallabies led to that first opportunistic try, but it did really follow a trend where Scott Barrett just had a dominant physical display, really getting on front football, playing the full 80 minutes, and is really pushing himself into what is a promising starting lock, but also potential World Player of the Year candidate. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes during the World Cup and the rest of these tournaments and warm-up games. But we're going to keep a close eye on him because he's really making a case as a standout player this year. Looking at some of the other interesting observations. So Rob Valentini obviously scored for the first try for the Wallabies. This was a fantastic passage of play from the Wallabies. I thought both in the first half and the second half, they had 20 minutes sort of in the start of each half where they really were able to put together a number of phases, dominate possession and territory. And I won't say they were unlucky not to come away with more points. They should have done that. That's something I'll touch on when I dive into the Wallabies a little bit more. But they couldn't manage this game in a way where they came away with more points, took a few more chances, and that try from Valentini was just reward for both him. He had an outstanding game as well, but also for that period of domination that the Wallabies had early in the first half. Kind of similar ways that the first half played out. It really felt like the Wallabies had a lot of possession, a lot of territory at the start of the half. We saw yellow cards around the midpoint of each half, and both of those yellow cards led to the All Blacks doing what they typically do, which is they turn the points on really, really quickly. I've seen some of the comments even in my YouTube channel, people saying that the All Blacks just seem to have this magic turbo button where they can absolutely turn points on, score tries, and just start to pull away from teams. And we saw that in this game. You look at the first half, Marika Koroibete goes off, and then we get 2 tries there, both just after or into that sort of 30-minute zone, and then just before halftime. The All Blacks are great at scoring there just before halftime. So Cody Taylor able to get a try, as well as Will Jordan continuing his fantastic run of form. Moving to the second half, and same thing. The Wallabies really did dominate territory and possession. Now, at this point, Alan Alatua unfortunately succumbed to injury. He was taken off, and I think Tate McDermott was there as their replacement captain, making a lot of these big decisions. Now, Tate McDermott turned down what I counted as 3 penalties in that 20-minute period after halftime. Obviously, the Wallabies are trying to play expansive. They're trying to play positively to score points. At that point, they're down 19-7, so a 12-point gap. Rather than take the 3 he elects to kick in the corner and to back their rolling maul. Now, the All Blacks' maul defense has been fantastic. And I think ultimately what they were looking for was a statement of intent, the Wallabies. But the All Blacks' maul defense was up to the task. They were able to turn possession over twice with attacking rates from the Wallabies. And it really did show, well, one, that the Wallabies, for all their dominance, came away with no points, which in an international match against, a team like the All Blacks is just, you really should be taking the points when they're on offer. And it also demotivates a little bit where you have so much possession, so much territory, and you're unable to convert that in points. Conversely, shortly after the yellow card, and Taniela Tupou having to persevere through what looked to be a broken rib. I'm sure others now, maybe the medical reports have come out, but he was really struggling. There was a pass that he tried to make where he couldn't even execute the pass properly. And then he was forced into 3 scrums, 2 of which were reset, with a potentially suspected broken rib. Crazy that he wasn't taken off. But, it's no surprise that the scrums weren't able to hold their balance, and ultimately the All Blacks got a penalty there. We were able to move down the field very, very quickly, and then we're able to just roll into tries. So Caleb Clark able to join the rolling more or the pick and go and score a try there. And then you had Mark Talia and Reiko Ioane both putting on tries late sort of in the game. The All Blacks, again, just hit the turbo button. The Wallabies, unable to come up with points when they are in dominant positions, unable to come with rewards for the territory and possession that they showed, and really just lacking a bit of game management. A lot will be made about Tate McDermott and Carter Gordon in that combination. I actually think that Carter Gordon looks to me like a fantastic finisher. He's had 2 cameos off the bench. He's looked great. But in terms of leading this team around, I just feel the combination of Tate McDermott and Carter Gordon might be just a little bit inexperienced for international level. So I'd like to see them pair with a Nick White, Carter Gordon, or a Tate McDermott with Quade Cooper. I feel like that's a better balance. There's a bit more experience mixed with their youth. And having those 2 combinations coming off, one starting, one finishing, I think is a better mix for the Wallabies. But there were certainly some positive signs here. Just a real lack of execution from the Wallabies, a lack of game management, given the young 9-10 combination here, and just poor decision-making, I thought. Unable to come up with points when it really mattered. From an All Blacks perspective, though, they really are locking in both their 15 and their 23. This looks like a team that is well settled and a team that is ready for the Rugby World Cup. Now, they're going to continue to, let's say, trial some of these, a bit more depth in the squad so they can really land on that 33-man World Cup squad. I'm sure they'll be tinkering a little bit with selections going into the next game against Australia. They have the luxury to do so now. But this was a dominant display for them. And really turning away defensively, the Wallabies for those periods of time must be really a confidence-building exercise. And then able to put on points quickly when it mattered was really the winning of the game. So let me explain to you now why the All Blacks can be so confident from the results they've had so far in the Rugby Championship and as they build up to the Rugby World Cup. So obviously we spoke about Scott Barrett. I've highlighted 3 key moments here in the match. He is just really building into a fantastic starting lock. To me, he's the form lock both in the All Black squad, but in the Rugby Championship, he really is setting himself apart with his work rate, his engine, and 3 big moments here. So I've touched on the moment with Tate McDermott, able to force the error for the first try of the match. But this moment down here with Samu Kerevi, hot on attack in the second half. He looked for all money set to score. Scott Barrett was the last line of defense, able to come across the field and make that covering tackle. That's in the second half, around about the 63rd minute, something like that, I think, where he's making cover tackles against, really dangerous players like Samu Kerevi. Really shows his high work rate. And then this moment with Nick White, the shush moment. There's been other moments with the finger on the mouth, again telling Nick White to shush. What I find interesting about this moment, and I've seen this a few times now as well with this All Blacks. The All Blacks last year went through the fire. Poor results, questions asked about the full team, including and most of all the coach. They came through the fire and they were able to put on an amazing display there at Ellis Park to really turn their fortunes around and to build into this team, which we can now see as super, super confident. But I noticed in that game that you had the likes of Ethan de Groot, super confident going into that and, chirping a little bit back to the Springboks. And this is a guy who's getting one of his, few starts against the Springboks at Ellis Park with the All Blacks under all sorts of pressure. There's just a little bit of, they're just building up this extreme confidence to the point where they're giving teams a bit of lip. They're giving it back to other teams. This is another example of that, where Scott Barrett is just mouthing off straight back, giving it back to Nick White. And it's showing that there's a bit of steel around this All Blacks to me. Nepal Alala did the same thing, calling out one of the Wallabies after a penalty. Come and get some. Come and get some. You know, this is not what we typically see from the All Blacks. They normally play a little bit, I guess, less bravado, but we are seeing a level of bravado from the All Blacks that I think is actually a sign of their confidence, and it's a sign of intent that they are going to bring to forward packs come the Rugby World Cup. I love it. Little bit of niggle, letting opposition know, and ready to get stuck into them. There's a real mentality edge, a real steel that's starting to build around this All Black squad, and that's what I love most about this moment from Scott Barrett giving it to Nick White. And for the Wallabies, in terms of optimism, I would say this, right? There were moments, periods of the game where they were dominant. What they really lacked, as I mentioned before, was game management. Now, I still feel they need to find that right mix of 9 and 10. I believe they will. I still feel there's enough talent within this squad to really challenge big teams. Angus Bell came back and had a fantastic return from injury. He was breaking tackles. He had to come on later, sort of odd moment where Tupou, he was waiting on the sideline for a long time. Tupou was yellow carded. He came on, had to come off, had to come back on. So, you know, a little bit of mucking around there, but he really showed with ball in hand he can be threatening. He plays like another loose forward, dangerous, and really stamped his mark as one of the bright lights out of this game. Same with Will Skelton. He's building into his role. He's actually playing like a big man, dominating the collision and actually getting in there, in and around the ruck, stealing ball, pilfering it. And I think he's going to be a huge addition for them come World Cup time. Rob Valentini continues his great form. He has great form against the All Blacks, I've noticed as well. He's always worth putting a try on against the All Blacks because he plays so well against the All Blacks. But another world-class player. So there, right there, you've got 3 world-class players right there in the Wallabies pack, and I thought makeup of the loose forward trio was a lot better, a lot of size there. Tom Hooper, you know, got a proper run this time, so good to see him there. He'll be better for the experience as well. Then you've got the back line. Mark Nawanga-Nituasi, fantastic in this game. Marika Korobetsi did get found out sort of late in the game by Mark Talia's goose step and other factors, but he's another guy who just brings an X factor, physicality in defense. I think there is the making here of a core group of players that are going to be a threat come World Cup time. Add Samu Kerevi once he gets more game time under his belt. I think there's 5 or 6 players here you can look at and say are world class, and there are certainly players that you can build a team around. Where they lack is very, very obvious. It's at the 9-10 pivot. It's probably, you probably needed someone who can partner Will Skelton, who has a bit of steel and a bit of edge around him as well. And it's at the centre combos as well. They haven't quite landed on that 13, and therefore they're sort of struggling. But I do think game management, decision making, if they can fix that up, they can actually start to put teams under scoreboard pressure, tick the scoreboard over, and build around these electric players that they have in their squad. So I would say, if you listen to Eddie Jones, they're a shoo-in for a positive performance at the Rugby World Cup. The saying was they're not going to France for the croissants or something like that. But I think there's a little bit, an element of truth in it, in that there are positives there that they can build on. And I feel that the fixes are very, very easily identifiable and I think fixable. So Wallaby fans, don't give up on your team just yet. It must feel horrible the way the performances are going. But there is an opportunity for this Wallabies team to turn it around if they can just find the right decision makers. Okay, guys. That's my review. That's my summary. That's why I want you guys to be optimistic about both teams' chances going into the Rugby World Cup. And I'll be here for more videos over the coming weeks, the lead up to the Rugby World Cup. And we've got a lot to cover. So stick with me, guys. Look forward to seeing you again on the channel. And I'll be back again soon. See ya.